Państwa z samego początku wspierałem działania państwa zakrzewskich, którzy doprowadzili...
From the very beginning, I supported the activities of Mr. and Mrs. Zakrzewski, who have been trying to introduce distance learning since 2008. The court decided that it was a discriminatory action against Zakrzewski family. I think that it should be stopped to make the best possible use of this form of teaching in Poland, and not only in Poland but also in other countries. I support such actions, and the parliamentary appeals sounded like that.
Również w innych krajach. Także wspieram bardzo mocno właśnie takie działania i w interpelacjach poselskich również to wybrzmiało.
Paweł i Marzena Zakrzewscy rozpoczęli swój
Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski started their home education project in 2008. Today this project seems even more close to our hearts than before in 2008. It was a complete novelty. Education from home was something we could not imagine in our traditional organized world. As a result of a pandemic, our world has changed completely, and in fact, education from home is a necessity.
Szkoła, którą założyli w 2009
The
roku,
school which they founded in 2009 turned out to meet the expectations of a large group of people, especially children, because within a few years it turned out that thousands of children wanted to participate in activities in this school.
tysiące dzieci chciało uczestniczyć w zajęciach tej szkoły.
Od 2008 roku rodzina państwa Zakrzewskich
Since 2008, the Zakrzewski family of Paweł and Marzena began actions related to development of education, especially personalized education.
niestety nie spotkało to się z życzliwością polskiego państwa.
Ta forma edukacji okazuje się, że jest dosyć interesująca.
This form of education turns out to be interesting and develops not only in terms of knowledge about the world of physical and chemical phenomena, but also develops very intellectual context, and I can say about it with the all firmness because I met the children of the Zakrzewski's family and they participate in this form of education. It turns out that their level of knowledge is very high, and the way they organize their family and everyday activities is
Jestem
impressive.
naprawdę mile zaskoczony poziomem ich wiedzy, doświadczenia i właśnie tym sposobem zorganizowania rodziny, ale i codziennych zajęć.
Fundacja Lex Nostra z
The
uwagą
Lex Nostra Foundation is closely following the story of the Zakrzewski's family, who are the precursors of home education, and for this reason they have been subjected to a lot of harassment by the Polish state authorities.
Zablokowano konta, spotkała
Their bank accounts have been blocked.
naszej administracji.
They faced the repression by many bodies of our administration, but I am glad that the recent court verdicts have restored the dignity and honor of this Polish family.
działań związanych
This activity has started to be under surveillance by various organizations. I have also undertaken many activities related to interventions, appeals to the ministers of governments, as well as I have supported the activities of Marshal Colonel Morawiecki, who has been immersed in this great matter, important for Polish education, which he supported. Enough with the discrimination of Zakrzewski family. It has to end.
Posiedzenie, które dzisiaj się
The
odbywa,
meeting
ma
of the
charakter
court
posiedzenia.
that is being held today is a closed session, which means that their parties and their attorneys are attending. An additional problem as regards to the entry of you gentlemen into this building is the state of the current epidemic which we have, so entrance to the court building for the public due to the state is forbidden in line with my order. In one sentence, It seems that the tax office is harassing the Zakrzewski family by questioning the way they have managed their own property, attempting to impose penalties, and has illegally issued a decision on the basis of which it is today demanding the arrest of the father and mother of Dozen. Persecution by the tax authorities to which the persecutor's office has been involved. Nothing is based on legal grounds. Courts take side of Mr. and Mrs. Zakrzewski. We as a foundation wanted to participate in this case concerning the arrest of Mr. Zakrzewski and Mrs. Zakrzewska on the basis of the tax case. This is unusual, something like this in Poland. I guess there hasn't been any such thing in Poland yet. We are evidently dealing with repression of state authority against a large family.
Ja muszę powiedzieć, że kilkadziesiąt lat pracowałem w organach ścigania.
I have to say that for several decades I have worked in law enforcement agencies. I have conducted serious investigations. I have dealt with the fight against organized crime, the most serious ones. I have had to deal with the most serious criminals in this country, but I have not met with such an insistence of surveillance against the family. It is shocking for me. This is a strange situation, since no one has submitted any order or regulation of the president of the court, on the basis of which no one was allowed to enter the court building at all. The Zakrzewski family is considered to be precursors of modern education in Poland. This is how we got to know each other, although I have also been dealing with the education for many years. They established a network of modern schools which was attacked by officials who did not like this development. These were the places which introduced modern methods of education, created citizens who were very conscious of their rights and duties, and who developed this country. All this was destroyed by the authorities, and this is, in my opinion, probably some stage of the repression, this time not schools that are destroyed by founders who try to change the face of education in Poland to a much modern one.
Państwa Zakrzewskich jest taką sprawą podobną.
The Zakrzewski's family case is such a tax case in which it can be shown how our country's tax office work. Proceedings, which have been conducted since 2015 and were conducted in a way to make it impossible to control the decisions of the tax authorities by administrative courts. Proceedings on the basis of a decision which has not been properly delivered. Other actions have been taken, including enforcement proceedings on the basis of those decisions, which have not been introduced into legal transactions. Then, other oppressive actions have been taken.
Posiedzenie, które się dzisiaj odbywa, jest
The court session that is being held today is being watched by the ministry, as we have many interventions and inquiries from members concerning this matter.
dotyczących tej sprawy.
In my opinion, this is the repression that tax authorities apply to this family. Clearly, when it comes to court verdicts, they take side of Mr. and Mrs. Zakrzewski. This case concerned an arrest in a case in which the court also decided in favor of Zakrzewski family, which is unbelievable. So we are dealing with repressions, with persecution from the tax authorities.
W wielu przypadkach, w setkach przypadków,
In many cases, they have discontinued the proceedings or ordered to discontinue the proceeding as being unfounded. And what's strange, it is the institutions set up to check activities, initiate proceedings on the same materials, which is unusual for me because there is such principle as res judicata, the seriousness of things judged. He protected the authorities from being inspected by the administrative court in these proceedings, and it was mistakenly considered that the decisions were already final. Any attempts of the Zakrzewski family to bring an inspection of the activities of tax authorities by administrative courts were in fact impossible because the authorities themselves, by inspecting the decisions, blocked the possibility of substantive examination of these cases in the course of the proceedings, but also later on in the court administrative proceedings. It's not about any great depth. It's about the mistakes of the tax authorities and persecution of man by a system that is simply inhuman, cruel, and unjust. We can say that these actions were taken to discredit the Zakrzewski family in the community in which they were functioning. The official who issued such wrong decisions should first of all not be afraid to overrule, and I have the impression that here is either fear of overrule of these unjust, wrongful decisions stated by the courts, or an ordinary hatred towards the family which is innocent. Confirmed the right of the Zakrzewski family, annulled the decisions of the second instance authority, showing a number of irregularities regarding the proceedings conducted in court's opinion with particular theses. In my opinion, we are dealing with a systemic inefficiency of the state, which is not able to admit a mistake. As I said, the official should not be afraid of admitting a mistake. The office should not be afraid of saying enough to bad decisions, and a politician should not be afraid of saying enough. I know that at least several dozen members of parliament intervened here, and that shows how this matter is touching for all people from different parties. Beyond political divisions, everyone intervened. This also shows that not just one party, one person, but in fact all political groups intervened defending this family. And it also shows, on the one hand, for sure, the powerlessness of the state against its own official, but on the other hand also this lack of empathy. It is necessary to adopt the principle that education is free. The state does not interfere in decisions of parents, and unfortunately we have here examples of the fight against these schools everywhere in the world, from America, Poland to Russia. In Poland, a large network of schools owned by the Zakrzewski's family has been hit in the head by the lobby of the state schools. There are various methods, such as involving the state, the police, inventing any pretext. Fortunately, we have made a few appeals with Colonel Morawiecki of blessed memory. Surprisingly, the courts have guarded freedom guaranteed by Constitution. As far as I know, the administrative court has already ruled on the issue and revoked the decision of the director of the tax chamber, so it is difficult to say why this proceeding is still going on. I am very glad that the recent court verdict stopped the discrimination of human rights related to the acts of repressions of Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewskis.
rodzinę Pawła i Marzeny Zakrzewskich.
Prosiłem pana
I
sędziego.
asked the judge to come down here to the journalist, but he didn't want to do so. I am very pleased that the court has confirmed our reservations which we have about this case, and in fact crushed in his decisions everything that Tax Control Office has prepared. This is another confirmation that the Zakrzewski's family is right, and this is another confirmation that the system related to fiscal control worked incorrectly here. However, we are dealing with an independent court, and I am very pleased that the independent court assessed both the evidence and does the arguments in this way, because it only confirms that Zakrzewski's family is fully innocent here. The decisions which were attempted to be issued and which were not finally delivered. We have confirmations from the Provincial Administrative Court of Warsaw and the Provincial Administrative Court in Lublin, which resulted in the fact that on the basis of documents which were not introduced into legal transactions, a number of charges were made against the Zakrzewski's family. They were attributed with motives or method of illegal activity, depletion of tax receivables. On this basis, they were created as unreliable taxpayers who avoid paying their liabilities to state treasury, which, as confirmed by recent court verdicts, was based on untrue thesis. As the court stated today, the evidence gathered in this case does not allow such a request to be taken into account. There were two aspects of this case. One is that another judicial authority found that there was no proper delivery of both a decision and subpoena by an Inland Revenue Office. These documents were sent to the wrong addresses. On the basis of this decision, activities that should not be carried out by the tax office were undertaken. It means the dissemination of information to discredit the Zakrzewski's family, and which excluded the normal functioning in society. It is impossible to imagine a situation where the authorities claiming that the Zakrzewski's family has tax arrears make it impossible for them not only to live a normal life, to function in society, but also to obtain things such as bank credit and functioning within various types of organizations where not having tax arrears is important. Today's decision and decisions that the courts have taken so far indicate that the Tax Control Office did not act correctly and objectively in the case of the Zakrzewski's family. The involvement of individuals, social organizations, lawyers, courts, administrative courts was so significant. It was very important. It was present in a situation where there is no so-called Zakrzewski family's case. Assuming possibility there were such case and these arrears actually occurred, the cost incurred by the state in connection with this type of activity overwhelmed any expected benefits. So the involvement of the state was massive, and from this perspective, it is possible to assess the effectiveness of the activities of these bodies. These proceedings show how the state's bodies can engage themselves not as an impartial bodies which aim to establish the facts. They founded a fantastic network of schools in Poland. They have done a lot for us as a society, and now the state, which is the emanation of this society, should thank them instead of punishing them. We are dealing here with the opposite situation. This means that the proceedings are conducted in such way that the Zakrzewski's family must prove this tax is not due. This procedure is conducted in such way that they are prevented from using those institutions which are guaranteed by the Constitution, such as the right to the court. The only institution which rise to the occasion were the administrative courts. The court made its decision and justified it widely and closely. The legal status was difficult, that it was a subject not only of a constitutional complaint, which is currently waiting for consideration with the Constitutional Tribunal, but also of a request from the Ombudsman to the Constitutional Tribunal, to the Minister of Finance, to determine today the interpretation of the regulations on the basis of which the Zakrzewski's family in 2012 and 2013, according to the tax authorities, had to pay tax. This means that the proceedings were not carried out correctly. The administrative court, as regards to the case of Zakrzewski's family, in 2018 issued two verdicts, also taking into account their complaints, with the argument that the evidence was not gathered properly. They were not introduced into legal transactions after confirmation by the first instant court itself, but those contain such defects that should result in the elimination from the legal transactions. And finally, After many years of struggle for justice in the courts of the Zakrzewski's family would mean that they have no tax arrears, and it is confirmed by the courts in two verdicts. 12 children and an infant has to be taken care of. How did you prepare for this meeting? Was there a fear that something might go wrong? A little bit, but we were counting on the court's prudence.
Do ustalenia treści przepisu
In order to determine the content of the provision, not only administrative courts, but also the Ombudsman applies for an interpretation to the Minister of the Finance, whether the case is the subject of a decision by the Constitutional Court. Assigning to Polish citizens the competence of these bodies and deciding, as of the date of taking certain actions, whether the actions involved any tax obligation or not, with the creation of some kind of tax obligation. Passing on the responsibility for unclear tax regulations to the taxpayer is, in my opinion, unacceptable, and from this perspective, I think that the conducting proceeding in such legal environment with such involvement of state is unacceptable. This decision restores citizens' confidence in the court. I hope that cooperation between judiciary and the Ministry of Finance will be successful in the future, and that there will be more such decisions that restore confidence in the functioning state apparatus. The form of conducting classes is quite interesting. It turns out that after so many years it meets expectations, especially now during pandemic. It has become a part of what is needed now because the form of out-of-school education, form of homeschooling and the education of Zakrzewski's family meets these social expectations. Educational activity and personalized education, Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski's, is a model of a good education activity in Poland. This form of education meets these expectations. Children who are taught in these schools after high school are really prepared not only in terms of knowledge, but also prepared to live in society, in social and political organizations. Today, personalized education is the best education that knows the individual approach to the needs of each student's developmental capabilities and career building. Thanks to Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski, who started this project in 2008, Poland could very quickly implement new e-learning solutions in a pandemic situation. Mr. Ignacy, I know there's been a parliamentary interpellation signed by many parliamentarians. I am proud of the Polish members of parliament that they had the strength and courage to get involved in Paweł and Marzena case. I am very grateful. This proceeding is over. The interpellation to the Ministry of National Education regarding initiatives taken in the area of home education by Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski's. Mr. Paweł and Mrs. Marzena Zakrzewski have been and are creatively involved in the broadly understood development of education, culture of science and national heritage. In 2009, they edited a pioneering collective work entitled Home Education in Poland, Theory and Practice, where 27 authors involved in the development of out-of-school education shared their reflection and experience. These publications were reviewed by 8 professors and over 40,000 copies have been distributed to this day. They have effectively engaged in beneficial legislative changes in the field of out-of-school education, which had their finale in 2009. They have co-founded such projects as, for example, in 2011, the International Festival in Bandar Abbas Iran. In 2012, the Marathon Festival in Guadalajara, Spain. In 2012, the International Festival in New Delhi. 2012, the Book Festival, New Delhi, Montreal, and Toronto. In 2013, the Digital Storytelling Festival in Ankara. 2013, General Conference, ICOM, in Rio de Janeiro. Since 2009, they have been setting up personalized and democratic education clubs in Poland and abroad. Some of them later transformed into schools. Among other things, the Salomon School was established in Warsaw, which after several years of operation in 2015 brought together several thousand students. In 2014, the schools organized an innovative festival of fairy tales and stories, The Wizards of Word, 2014, followed by the Festival of Intangible Heritage of the end and beginning of the year, Carolers of Tradition. From Barbara to the King, Let the Joy of My Tradition Swing, 2014-2015. Ecumenical Convention, Around the Family Table, Home Education, Parenting, 2015. 2016, Creative Thinking Festival, Carnival of Fairy Tales, 2016, Home Education, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow at Belvedere. These schools were distinguished by their modern holistic approach to teaching, in which the whole family became the center of pedagogical influences. Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski schools created a personalized teaching system based on advanced information and communication technology. Authors' own subject programs, e-satchel, educational boxes, or international educational villages were implemented in didactics. Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski also led a series of scientific research focused on the broadly understood phenomenon of home education, which contributed to a better understanding of education out of institutional forms of education. Since 2007, Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski have continuously subsidized this activity from their private property and treated it as a support mission for other families. For Poland. From the documents collected by the association, a horrific image of oppression and abuse against the Zakrzewski's family appears to have been perpetrated by public officials who wanted to stop the rushed initiative of Paweł and Marzena Zakrzewski at all costs and eliminate them from social life. This led to the loss of many millions of family assets, and above all, advanced initiatives were stopped, as it turned out today, necessary for the proper development of education in Poland.